How often have you set goals and then find that you've not achieved them? How often have you set goals and achieved them, and how did you feel then? Elated? A sense of achievement? Relieved? Straight away looking for the next one? Goals are seen as very important in coaching. And in this session we'll hear about the advantages and disadvantages of goals and goal setting. The objectives for this session are that at the end of it you'll be able to critically evaluate the benefits and disadvantages of goal setting. You'll be able to evaluate factors that are considered important when setting goals, and analyse powerful questions to ask in setting goals. As I'm sure you've set goals in your life, and that you would not carry on doing it if it didn't bring some advantages, what are they as you think of them now? Write them down. Your answers may have included giving focus and direction. We've already discovered that we don't take in all the information that's coming into us, and we need some mechanism to let us choose which information is going to be useful for us and which isn't. So by having goals, we can start to focus on the information and the direction that is going to be of greatest value to us in meeting the goal. And for this reason, we largely get what we focus on. So what do you tend to focus on when you're thinking about a particular goal? Are you focusing on things that will help you achieve them, or on things that will make it less easy for you? Have you ever noticed how on the day you decide to buy a particular car, you see loads of them about? Or you buy a particular bit of clothing and you see lots of people wearing them. Was it that they weren't there before? No, it's just that you're focusing on them now. And the same thing works with goals. When you start to focus on them, that's when you start to notice all the information that will help you achieve them. When you focus then, this allows you to prioritize the information that's coming into you and make the most of the opportunities that arise. You'll be amazed how often, when you've set yourself a goal in an inspiring way, that someone phones up and talks to you about something that will help you, or an email arrives that's all about the goal. It's that now we've set the goal, we start to recognize all the opportunities that are out there. Well-set goals will help the person take responsibility for the results. When we take responsibility, then we're more committed to achieving the goal. This way, goals can be inspiring and motivational, particularly if you've noticed enough things about your client to realize how they are best motivated. Goal setting also allows the person to fit individual goals with those of the team and the organization. That's what performance reviews and appraisals are all about, if you have those. And when a person fully understands how their contribution fits into the whole, they're much more likely to be engaged. So, what are some of the disadvantages of goal setting that you might want to consider as a coach? Write down the ones that you can think of. I wonder what disadvantages you thought of. Here are some that you might have come up with. The first one is that goals can create overwhelm, particularly if the goal is large and long-term. For example, if someone has a goal of getting promotion in 2 years' time, depending where they are starting from, of course, then it may seem a long way off and very distant for the person, and that can sometimes demotivate people. The next one is very interesting and, in my way of thinking, is probably the cause of the greatest unhappiness in the Western world. And it goes something like this. If I get ... then I will be ... And the first gap is a goal, and the second gap is a feeling. For example, if I get promotion next year, then I'll be a success. From the way this sentence has been constructed, a cause-effect if you remember, then the person has set themselves a goal in order for a feeling that they really want now. That is, to feel successful. When I've earned X number of pounds, then I'll be happy. This person is saying that they're going to forego feeling happy until they reach the financial goal. Or, in the first one, that what they want is to feel successful, but they're prepared to put off feeling that for a year when they get their promotion. The goal has been set to access a feeling. But feelings come from thoughts in our heads. We can change that right now. We don't have to wait to achieve the goal to get the feeling. They think that the goal will bring them the feeling of success, or that money will bring them happiness. But what they want is the feeling, and in their minds they've decided that the feeling can only be reached by getting the goal. This is not the only option open to them. When you're coaching someone, it's often much easier and more productive to get them in touch with the feeling that they want first, and then let them find out if they still want the goal. The other disadvantage is that very often, when people get to their goal, they will feel whatever feeling they want for a short time, and then set another goal and think that that one is going to bring them the state they want. The important thing here is the state, not the goal. And something else that's linked to all of this is that when people set themselves goals like this, say getting promotion in a year's time, and for whatever reason they don't get it, probably because they or the outside world has changed in the meantime, they will still beat themselves up for not getting the goal, which is a highly unresourceful state, and then in that state they try and plan how they're going to move forward. I don't know if you've ever tried setting inspiring goals for yourself when you're in a very upset state, but it's not very motivating. And the other thing about this is that all learning and change is state dependent. So whatever state you learn something in, you have to go back into that state to access the information. So when you set yourself a goal in an unresourceful state, then you will have to go back to that state again and again to access information about the goal you set. Not very helpful. What can you do when you come across this situation? Well, first of all is to help the person break down the goals into small-sized chunks so that they have milestones and can see a path to getting to the goal. Then it's important to help the person access positive and resourceful states before they set goals. If they're not in such a good state when they have been talking about what is happening at the moment, then you'll want to do something to help them access better states before you move on. Anchoring is a great technique here, and you'll find it in books on NLP, although there are many ways of helping someone change their state. What ones can you think of? So have them access the state that they want from the goal before you work with them on how they're going to achieve it. For example, when the person says, "If I get promotion in a year's time, then I'll feel a success." Here you will want them to get in touch with what it's like when they are successful, and in that state start to think about how they will get promotion. The last thing that helps overcome the disadvantages of goals is to get your client, or yourself for that matter, to just focus on getting into the state that they want and then taking the next smallest step. And by the smallest, that can be very small, something like writing a list or moving a chair, that small. You see, if they do this and achieve it, then they're going to be in a resourceful state still, and then they're motivated for the next step. Achieving goals is just a series of very small steps. And the other thing this allows people to do is to feel good about what they have just achieved, and then, in a very resourceful way, think about whether they still want to go on with the goal or if something else is better now. It's important that people are able to set goals for themselves, but equally it's important to recognize what they want out of the goal. Are they committed to the goal, or are they wanting a state? I'm sure you've heard of the SMART goals criteria. It's thought that if you set goals in this manner, you're more likely to achieve them. You may want to think about whether this is so for you and for other people you know. When does SMART prove to be really useful and when does it not? So when you're helping people set goals, it's often useful to be quite specific about what they want, because that allows them to focus on what they want and to look for opportunities to get them. If it is a goal and not the state the person wants, then it's quite important that they have some way of knowing when they've achieved it. Here again, it's very useful to work from the person's own model of the world on this, because the evidence that they want may be different from the teams or the organisations, and you'll want to take that into consideration. There are differences of opinion about the achievable bit of SMART. Some think that goals should be challenging and, in fact, be way beyond what is achievable, because that way people will inspire themselves to get the challenging goal rather than the one they know they can achieve, and that is often more than the one they thought would be achievable. I know a company that does this every year, and their growth has been exponential. Let's say an achievable outcome would be increasing sales by 10% from 100,000 to 110,000. And they achieve that and no more, because in their minds that is as far as they need to go. If, however, they set themselves a goal of increasing sales by 50% from 100,000 to 150,000, and even though they don't achieve that target, but because of the pull of the challenge they have reached 130,000, they have done better than setting themselves the achievable outcome. Other people think that it's demotivating because people may get despondent about not reaching the goal, and that people like goals when they're likely to get to them. And of course there is no right or wrong in this. It depends on the situation and how the goals are set and implemented. It is important that the goals are relevant. I remember one hotel that I worked in, and they set sales targets for the staff in the restaurant. And that was fine, except that only the restaurant manager and his 2 assistants took orders from the customers. So they were the only ones that were able to influence the result. It was largely irrelevant for the rest of the team. They had no influence on the sales. And lastly, linked to a goal being measurable, it is useful that it's time-bound. You can set a goal to draw up a new set of standards, but if there's no time limit on it, it could be done in a week's time or 10 years' time. So, what sort of questions will you ask your clients to set inspiring goals? Here are some examples. What do you want? Or, how do you want to be different? It's important that a goal is something someone wants rather than something they don't want. This is because of 2 main reasons. Firstly, as we've already thought about, what we focus on is what we get. And the second is that our unconscious minds find it less easy to process negatives and words like don't. So right now, whatever you do, don't think about a purple elephant. And don't put yellow spots on that elephant. What happens? You have to think about it in order to do the not bit. So if someone says to you something like, I don't want to be in conflict with my boss anymore, the unconscious mind has to focus on conflict with the boss, and if that's what they focus on, that is what they're likely to get. So in these cases, ask them how they would like to be different, so that you get an outcome that may be something like, I want to work well with my boss. Then they will start focusing on working well with the boss rather than conflict. How will you know when you're succeeding? How will you know when you're on track? What will you measure? The purpose of these questions is to set milestones and to break the outcome into small chunks. How will you know when you've succeeded? What will you hear, see, and feel when you've achieved it? What is it like when you feel like that? These questions are very important in inspiring someone. You will want to get them to imagine what it's going to be like when they've succeeded in their outcome, and to get them into the positive state now. That's what these questions are set up to do. Next we have, where do you want this outcome? When do you want to achieve this? These questions help make the outcome be specific. There may be instances where there are particular places and times when they don't want the outcome. Some people will, for instance, set an outcome for work that they don't want to carry over to their private lives. Other questions could be, how does this goal fit in with your other goals? Who else will be affected by this goal? These questions are about ecology. We are part of a system, and in setting goals, it's important to think about the impact of the rest of the system. For example, if you're going for a promotion, it may be you're studying for a qualification, and that could impact on your home life. So it's important for someone to think about these things before they set off on the goals. What other questions can you think of that will help you and your clients set really motivating goals?